Good afternoon, everyone. If everyone could take a seat so we can get started on our first EBA hearing of the year. Today we are going to start with the Maryland School for the Deaf. If I could have the analyst give your report first. Lynn Hyde.
Good morning. My name is Laura Hyde. Thank you, Senator King, and I am the budget analyst for the Maryland School for the Deaf. We're going to be starting on page 1 with the operating budget summary. Maryland School for the Deaf's fiscal 24 budget increases by $4.4 million, or 9.3%, to $51.6 million. If you'll please turn to page 2, Exhibit 1 on federal stimulus expenditures. This, between fiscal 20 and fiscal 21, Maryland School for the Deaf received $1.2 million in various federal stimulus funds for COVID-19 relief based on enrollment. And to date, the school has spent $927,000, or 80% of these funds, with approximately $236,000 remaining, or 20%. These are planned expenditures that were done by the required deadline of September 2023, which is next year. And in this exhibit, you can see that about approximately $415,000, or 45%, was spent on equipment, $221,000, or 24%, on curriculum, $127,000, or 14%, on PPE, and the remaining expenditures are either miscellaneous, information technology, or instructional supplies. If you'll please turn to Exhibit 2, this is the overview of agency spending. You can see here that this shows that the school spent approximately $40 million on salaries and wages, approximately 78%, and 10% on technical and special fees, which actually represents contractual services. The total budget is $51.6 million. And if you can turn to the next slide, this is enrollment. This is Exhibit 3. So you can see here that the MSD's actual enrollment history and assumptions for fiscal 2020 through 2024. This shows that the enrollment formula in the education article determines MSD's annual enrollment count, which uses a 4-year average to mitigate sharp increases and decreases in the student population. For fiscal 2020 to 2024, MSD's enrollment for formula funding, which is found in the last column in the last row, is 423 students. They had 52 enhanced services students, 61 early intervention students, and 392 school-age students. And this is the fiscal 2024 estimate. If you please turn to page 5, this is the proposed budget change. MSD's general fund allowance is formula-based and calculated on a per-pupil allocation in 5201 of the education article and the enrollment formula mentioned previously. Due to an increase in the per-pupil amount mandated in Chapter 36 of 2021, which is Blueprints for Maryland's Future Implementation, MSD's per-pupil funding increased from $83.10 in fiscal 23 to $86.42, or $8,642 in fiscal 2024. When combined with other changes to fund sources, MSD's proposed budget increase is $4.4 million, which is primarily reflected in the increase to workers' compensation, salaries and wages, health insurance, and other related personnel expenses. If you could please turn to page 6 under personnel data. This chart shows that Maryland School for the Deaf is authorized for 340 regular positions and 94.5 contractual positions, which is an increase of 5.5 regular positions and 12 contractual positions. For fiscal 24, Maryland School for the Deaf has a 1% budgeted turnover rate, and this will allow the school an opportunity to fill 6 vacant positions in the upcoming fiscal year. As in fiscal 23, the school reports a variety of reasons for these vacancies, including the need for teachers and staff who are fluent in American Sign Language and the expensive housing market in Maryland. If you'll please turn to page 7, Exhibit 5. under key observations. This chart shows that Maryland School for the Deaf, they had 100% of their students plan to attend college, work, or enter a training program. This percentage exceeds the graduating classes of calendar 2018 through 21, and this is a return to their calendar 2020 100% placement levels. If you'll please turn to the next page on Exhibit 6. This is kindergarten readiness assessment scores. Prior to the pandemic, in fiscal 2019 or fall 2019, the kindergarten students scored above 40% in mathematics and physical well-being, but below 20% in social foundations and language and literacy. And now these shows that 3 years later, students have not quite returned to pre-pandemic achievement levels, but this also could be due to pandemic school closures because students did not take the KRA in fiscal 2021. If you'll please turn to the next page. This is concern number 2. The joint chairman, there was a 2022 joint chairman's report required by the Maryland State Department of Education and MSD to update responsibilities for monitoring MSD. The committees also asked MSDE and MSD to update their outdated memorandum of understanding. And the due date for this request, JCR request, is November 1st. As of now, the MSD has not submitted this JCR request, and in the meantime, MSD and MSDE continue to operate under their prior MOU. And DLS suggests that MSD comment on the status of the MOU and the delay in submitting this request. And then I think we are welcoming Mr. John Serrano is their new superintendent, and I hear that he started this week. And so, quite the introduction. And so this is, the DLS concurs with the governor's allowance, and I stand for questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the committee? Okay. Mr. Serrano, I'd like to welcome you here. Talk about trial by fire. We're happy to have you here for your first visit to the EBA Subcommittee. We also have Ann Miller, who's the Chief Executive Officer, Chief Operating Officer, and Jennifer Yost Ortiz, the Interim Chief Educational Program Officer. So, Mr. Serrano, take it away.
First of all, I want to thank you for the warm welcome. It's a pleasure to be here. It's my third day on the job. So, the Maryland School for the Deaf agrees with the analysis recommendations.
That's the best speech I've heard yet today.
Great.
Thank you very much. No comments from the committee? I think we're good. Thank you very much. Yes, Senator Benson.
Yes. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Why do you think we have this delay relative to the memorandum of understanding?
Hello, I'm Ann Miller, the Chief Financial Officer and the Chief of Operations. So let me take that one because I've been here longer than 3 days. The delay is that we have submitted a memorandum to the Maryland State Department of Education. It is in their upper management. I can report that late last night they returned it to us for signature. And so it should be very close to being signed. We just have gotten it late last night. We'll look it over to make sure any little changes they made are good and sign it. And I expect by the end of next week, this new memorandum of understanding will be finished.
So what has been the time frame?
We started
waiting.
We started work in June on this memorandum, and then some people had been ill. And it took a little bit of time, but we got back to work on it in October and November, and then it went over to the Maryland State Department of Ed. I cannot comment on what the delay was at the Maryland State Department of Ed.
Thank you.
Can I make a request? If you have not heard back from MSDE within the next 2 weeks, would you please contact my office?
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
trying to get the document up. My hands are not very good always. Okay, we should probably.
Can I start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, you did? Well, while we're getting this together, come on up to the table and do that.
Did you want me to wait for the interpreters?
Yes, please.
Yes, okay.
Sorry about that.
Thank you. All right.
It wasn't clear on my list whether you were just informational or if you wanted to speak, so, sorry, I left you out.
That's okay. Members of the Education, Business, and Administration Subcommittee, my name is Todd Reynolds. I'm the political coordinator for the American Federation of Teachers. We are the state federation that represents a number of Maryland state workers as well as public education workers here in the state of Maryland. That would include Maryland Professional Employee Council. Those are state workers, professional state workers in Unit G. AFT Healthcare Maryland, representing a lot of state healthcare workers in Unit E. And Maryland's Faculty and Staff Association, those representing faculty in the newly created bargaining unit, Unit K. We're here to support full funding for the Maryland School for the Deaf. We did want to draw attention to some persistent staffing concerns that may be of interest to this committee. We submitted a written testimony. I just wanted to spend a few minutes going over some of the highlights. The first major issue is an issue of misclassification. As you can see from the analysis, I think roughly a quarter to a third of the staff at the School for the Deaf are considered contractual or special or temporary employees. Obviously, this is an issue that is problematic for a number of state agencies, not just the School for the Deaf. But the one thing we did want to draw attention to regarding the School for the Deaf is that we had thought that two specific bills passed by the legislature, one in 2019 and one last year by Senator Benson, addressed this issue. Those bills that were signed by the governor and rolled into law said skilled and professional employees at the School for the Deaf will be under the state personnel management system as in either the skilled service or professional service. And the SPMS does not allow for contractual appointments. As you can see, roughly, I think DLS analysis had 90 contractual. The problem is a number of these contractual appointments, we had found out actually the last couple months, have been at the school for a number of years as teachers, as teachers' aides, as IEP specialists. So we think they're misclassified. They're doing the same job as pinned professional and skilled employees, and have been there for a number of years, a number of them. So we think misclassification is a major issue. Another issue that is a concern, again, and you're going to hear this refrain for a number of state workers, is pay freezes, steps that have been frozen over a number of years. Again, this is not, this is something that is plaguing a number of state agencies. We did want to draw attention to this at the school because not only is School for the Deaf a state agency, it's an education system. And as you know, Senator King especially being on the Kerwin Commission, we did a lot of work over the years to try to address the issue of how do we increase or better our public school systems. Unfortunately, a lot of the benefits that have come with Kerwin and the blueprint have not been met at the School for the Deaf, namely the career ladder, which is supposed to increase pay for teachers, more supports.
I hate to do this to you, but could you wrap it up?
That's, well, I mean, again, we call for full funding for the school. We think full funding includes funding for full PINs and increased pay for teachers and staff. But that's why we're here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any comments? Okay, thank you very much. All right, next on our agenda, we have the Board of Public Works. Our budget analyst is Patrick Frank. Go ahead, Patrick.
Okay. Yes, the Board of Public Works is the governor, the controller, and the treasurer. The board itself reviews and approves contracts. There's also a staff of 9 with the board. The board also gets a number of different grants that that pass through the board that it passes on to nonprofits and other organizations. We'll start with the budget here. As you can see, almost all of the spending in the Board of Public Works is related to general funds. There is a small special fund appropriation in 2023. That's about $500,000. That is a grant from the dedicated purpose account that was given to the Baltimore City as they try to make plans for the State Center complex. Okay. There is a contingent fund in the board. This fund is used for contingencies, for things that nobody anticipated we would need to spend money on. In recent years, it's been a lot for some erroneous conviction grants that the state has that the Board of Public Works has awarded, and we'll talk about that issue a little bit later. There's also in the fund this last year was a portrait for the treasurer, who had just stepped down after more than 20 years of service. There are 3 deficiencies in this budget. The first deficiency has to do with the erroneous conviction grants that I mentioned earlier. We'll talk about that issue later on in the analysis in more detail. Essentially these grants have been awarded. This is a matter of making sure that the people who have been awarded these grants get paid. There's also some money to replenish the contingent fund. In recent years, what's happened is this money has been gotten a deficiency for what was used in the first half of the year. And finally, there was some equipment that was bought for live streaming meetings, and so that was added as a deficiency to the budget as well. If you look at the spending, I mean, this is, like I said, there's 9 people that staff this board. Together, they're about 5% of the budget. The other 95% goes to the grants that I had mentioned, and like I said, we'll talk about that a little bit more, the judgments against the state and the contingent fund. So there are some budget changes this year. The small changes have to do with staff. A lot of these are the salary increases that have been happening statewide, so I won't belabor that. I think you all are already aware of that. Let's see, some of the other things we've got money is the grants here. There's a new grant for the Chesapeake Bay Trust. There's also the contingent fund is going to go from $500,000 to $2.5 million. There's the Western Maryland Railroad got a little more in its grant, as did the Baltimore Zoo. And there was a grant for the West North Avenue Development Authority. That grant has been taken out because this is now its own agency, and there will be a hearing for that agency later in the session. And let's see, next is probably the Chesapeake Bay Trust grants. There's two new ones. These were required by law. One is for $10 million annually, and that is in order to help with planting more trees, especially in urban areas that don't have a lot of trees. Also, there's $1.5 million for their Chesapeake Conservation Corps, and they received $1.1 million in this year's budget. The prior governor would not release those funds, but one of the first things that the new governor did after being inaugurated was to release those funds. The trust is here today, and they can, if you have questions, they might be able to answer any questions you have about their programs and how that money will be spent. There is also a grant for the Thurgood Marshall School. This is it's PS 103. It's where the late Supreme Court Justice went to school. The attempt here is to get this to be a national park. Since we've been asking for the Park Service to see what their opinion is on that. I think since this actually was published, we have found out that that the Park Service has responded, and although they found a lot of merit in it, they did not agree that it would be a national park. I haven't had much time to review that, so I don't want to say something that could be misconstrued. So talk to those who have had more time to review it, I would say. Okay, one of the big grants we have here has to do with the Baltimore Zoo. And one of the things they do is they give us their annual financial statement each year, and they give us monthly attendance data. What this chart shows is how their attendance has been by fiscal year since 2010, as you can see by the trend line. before the pandemic, there was generally a steady increase in it. Obviously, the warmer months, the zoo is an outdoor place. When it's nice outside, people like to be outside and go to the zoo. There's much less attendance on the colder months. So, and also the worst part of the pandemic was the state was shut down in April, May, June, which are the best months for the zoo. So that was a very difficult year, but they did manage to get through it with some of the grants that the federal government was offering. When I looked at attendance more closely, compared 2019 to 2022, what you can see is what's interesting is general admission actually has increased a little bit since before the pandemic. Membership is down a little bit, but the big changes in attendance really has to do with schools. There are much less school children apparently going now, which is kind of interesting. Quickly, revenues and expenditures. What you see here, if you look at those bars, the red is the attendance revenues I was just mentioned earlier. They're doing pretty well. Also, the blue part is the largest part, and that's grants and contributions. The zoo relies very heavily on grants from, especially the state of Maryland, but also from Baltimore City. And also, there are also some in-kind services. Finally, the green are the special funds, the unusual funds that they got for the pandemic, to make it through the pandemic. As you can see here, just attendance, visitor revenue is doing quite well, because the paying attendance is doing quite well. That certainly has bounced back. Just to kind of here, there's a chart that shows exhibit number 8. It shows the different grants that the zoo gets from government agencies. As you can see, the state of Maryland, between the operating budget, capital budget, and MSDE, gives quite a bit, as does the city. All right. Second topic, as I said, is erroneous convictions. There was some legislation a few years ago that allowed the Board of Public Works to grant give these grants out. There's a formula now based on the median salary, and if you've been erroneously convicted, you can petition to get a grant. Usually they're about 7 years long is the payout, but if you're over 65, they shorten that to 3 years. These are the awards that have been made in recent years. The numbers will probably get bigger in the out years. Because there probably will be more grants awarded as well we anticipate in the future. Finally, our recommendation is some annual narrative that's been around since 2008. This is why we can do the zoo analysis, because we get these numbers. And with that, I'll end my presentation and take questions.
Thank you, Patrick. Great report. And I have been told that one of the reasons why the visits to the zoo are down from schools is because there's such a shortage of bus drivers. That seems to be the issue. The schools have a hard enough time finding bus drivers to drive kids back and forth to school, let alone on field trips. So that seems to be one of the issues. Okay, thank you. Any questions for Patrick? Okay, thanks, Patrick. All right, here's what we're going to do this afternoon. We're going to bring John Gontram, the Executive Secretary of the Board of Public Works, up to the table. But also, because we have 3 people from Western Maryland, I think we'll bring them up first and let them say a few words, and then they can get off on the road back to Western Maryland. So we have Wesley Hines, Executive Director of Western Maryland Scenic Railroad, Raymond Morris, the Mayor of Cumberland, and he's also with the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad, and Robert Flanagan, Mayor of Frostburg, Western Maryland Scenic Railroad. So, who wants to go first?
I'll go first. Thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing us.
Actually, let me have John Gontram go first,
Oh,
and then
okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair King, Senator Benson, Senator Quarterman, Senator Bailey. Wonderful to be with you again. John Gontram, Executive Secretary of the Board of Public Works. I want to start by thanking Mr. Frank for a great analysis, as always. I'll be very brief out of respect for the committee's time. Once again this year, the board's budget, as Mr. Frank's analysis indicated, can be conceptually separated into 2 categories. The first category, as Mr. Frank said, 95% of the funding can be thought of as pass-through funds. These include the board's contingent fund, funding to erroneously incarcerated individuals pursuant to orders from the Office of Administrative Hearings. And lastly, grantees named in the board's operating budget we do have a number of the individuals from the grantee organization signed up to testify today. The remaining 5% of the board's proposed FY24 operating budget allocation goes to board operating expenses, which are, as Mr. Frank said, primarily personnel expenses. The board's 9-member staff performs a number of important roles on behalf of the state, including facilitating and providing public access to the board's meetings and activities, overseeing the implementation of the state's procurement laws, and administering the tidal wetlands dredging and filling licensing program. That I'll conclude. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Okay, now go ahead.
All right.
Sorry
Again,
about that.
No, I quite understand. Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Ray Morris. I am the mayor of the city of Cumberland, and of course, the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad is a linchpin for tourism in our area. And as you said, I'm also the vice president of the board of the Scenic Railroad. So we're just here to thank you for your funding in the past, and thank you now for it. After COVID and everything, back to the level of funding that we had received prior, and just here to offer our support and our thanks for everything you've done for us.
Madam Chair, good to see you again. Greetings from Frostburg. I'm now the president of the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad, and to my right is our new CEO, Mr. Wes Hines. Just again, had an excellent year last year. We were over 60,000 in ridership, which broke every record that I'm familiar with, and I've been with the railroad since 2013. So in 10 years, we've come a long way. Again, you're always welcome to come and join us at any time. I know you're not that far from Cumberland and Frostburg.
And you know I love it up there.
I know you do. I know. And I remember you have a daughter that went to Frostburg State.
I did. That's right.
So she's still in South Carolina?
She's still teaching in South Carolina, but they trained her well.
All right. Well, that's all right. So you tell her we said hello, and hope to see you all. And again, thank you for your consideration today.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. I think everybody can hear me. First of all, it's very nice to meet you, Madam Chair, face-to-face. Last year, we had this conversation over Zoom,
that's right.
which is the most uncomfortable format ever devised by man. We'd like to say thank you. I'd personally like to say thank you to the entire committee, John, for what you do to assist the Western Maryland Scenic. The railroad is, of course, not only a linchpin for tourism, but it is a huge part of the local economy. We've added headcount. We've changed how we bring people aboard so that we keep them in Western Maryland and give them jobs that allow them to have a homestead in Western Maryland. Mm-hmm. That's been really a big part of what my leadership team at the railroad has been trying to do, and everything that you guys contribute to us. And again, thank you for returning the funding to the level it was set previously. These things all help the community, and that's really, as I said last year, is key to what I see us being all about. It isn't simply running trains. It's to provide Western Maryland a centerpiece, and a big mascot, if you will. Of course, the steam locomotive is running. She's operated every day as designed. This year during the Polar Express, we went from 9,000 before I was here. 2021, we managed to pull off 26,000. We won numerous awards that are actually international awards. So we put Cumberland and Frostburg and Allegheny County on the map for our industry. And then this year, we're going to break it again. We carried 33,500 people to the North Pole. It sounds, it's definitely, it's a lot of fun to do it, but it really is all about the community, about the people and those that we can impact with a positive historic experience. So thank you for everything that you do to help us.
Thank you. Well, and it is such a great experience to get on that train and take a ride, and for especially people that live in a more populated area like I live in, to get to go up to that part of the state and experience something like that is really a really neat thing that a lot of kids don't ever get to experience. So,
Right.
Thank you for what y'all do.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
How long does it take to do the tour?
If it depends on the experience you would prefer, but if I would recommend if you were coming up as an adult, you might take one of our moonlight trips on a Friday night or a dinner train on a Saturday night. Those are approximately 3 hours. There's plenty of local hotels that benefit from our trains operating, and we partner with those. If you have children or grandchildren, the ice cream train, our spring fling, and our pumpkin trains are designed to be about an hour in length, which really, if you're bringing kids up to our neck of the woods, it allows you to do the bike piece, the canal piece, the train piece. It gives you a lot of diversity in your day if you want to come and spend the weekend out from the city. So anywhere from an hour to 3 hours, and we can give you stuff to do all day on the train if you'd like.
If y'all could get the information to us, that would be,
Sure.
that would be very helpful.
Absolutely. I'll provide that
Thank
to
you.
John.
Thank
And
you.
Mr. Gontram, you're okay with disseminating that?
Of course, yes, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
Senator
you.
Quarterman.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. I just wanted to, first off, as a representative probably closest to you guys in Western Maryland, wanted to thank you for making the trip down here. I know I'm a little bit east of you, but just to kind of further educate some new members here of the committee of how much of a significance what you guys do out in Western Maryland is, and we really appreciate all your efforts, and look forward to hopefully this committee be able to continue to support those efforts, because it truly is a wonderful experience out there and a real economic engine for that part of the state, no pun intended. So thank you.
Very good.
Thank you, Senator.
All right, thank you all. Have a good weekend, all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Safe travel home. Okay, next I'll do a panel here of Diane Hutchins, Karen Brown, Jana Davis, and Dr. Alvin Hathaway.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, Diane Hutchins, Vice President of Government Affairs for the Maryland Zoo in Baltimore. We'd like to thank you for being here. We'd like to thank Mr. Gontram for his partnership and that of the staff of the Board of Public Works. I'd like to thank Mr. Frank for a thorough, fair, and well-written analysis. And we'd like to ask that the committee retain the full funding for the Maryland Zoo in Baltimore. To address Mr. Frank's one item, as you said, Madam Chair, school buses have been and school bus drivers have been a significant issue. However, I am happy to report something right now. Year to date, we have already had 12,631 in-person students at the zoo, with an additional 6,439 virtual field trips at the zoo. As of yesterday, in what is not the most high month for making reservations, that occurs in February, March, and April, we already have 21,702 field trip attendees reserved, and 147 separate groups virtually for between March and June. So we are making progress, and we will continue to work with the schools to do the best that we can and keep the zoo going. Thank you for your support.
Thank you. And as I've said to many of you, and I hope I never have to eat my words on this, but if you've gone over the hurdle of getting the money from the governor into that budget, I can't remember a time that we've gone back and taken the money away unless it's a real emergency, and haven't done that in my time. So let's just hope that things keep rolling well and we can keep all that into the budget.
Thank you, ma'am.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Karen Timer Brown. I'm the President and CEO of Historic Annapolis. Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and for the committee for allowing us to be here today. I am in support of and very grateful for the funding being put forward for Historic Annapolis to operate, maintain, and to manage 12 state-owned properties that are entrusted to us. It is an honor to be a part of this public-private partnership. Preserving state historic assets and making properties like the William Pickett House and Garden is available to the public as part of our mission. Funding from the Board of Public Works is critical for us so that we can preserve and protect these physical spaces and to provide engaging and meaningful opportunities to connect the community with our diverse heritage. We have identified the fact that our true need is in excess of the current support from the state as we're faced with aging system infrastructures throughout our buildings and with inflation and with increasing operational costs. Additionally, Historic Annapolis has expanded our portfolio with the state over the past decade with the inclusion of the James Bryce House, and most recently, the John Shaw House was added to our master lease agreement next year. I welcome an opportunity to take you to see some of these sites for a walkabout, to better familiarize you with these properties, and to continue to work together for the effective preservation of these cultural assets. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jana Davis?
Great, thank you so much, Madam Chair and Senators Bailey, Benson, and Corderman. Really appreciate your time today, and of course John Gontram from the Board of Public Works as well. I'm Jana Davis, I'm the president of the Chesapeake Bay Trust, and I'm here with my colleague Greg Burks behind me, who runs our Urban Trees program. This is our first time before you, so, and some of you may not be familiar with the Chesapeake Bay Trust, and Senator Bailey is a little bit. So I just wanted to give you a very quick background. We were created by the General Assembly in 1985 as a way to reach groups on the ground. We believe that empowering groups to lead and do their own projects leads to sustained success of those programs. We were created initially with no appropriation, but instead you all created the Bay Plate and the tax checkoff revenue streams for us to manage. We always say these monies go through the trust, not to the trust, because we issue them back out the door in the form of grants to, in fact, all of your districts. So we are known to be very efficient. We have the highest Charity Navigator rating for over 20 years, with 92 cents of the dollar going back into communities in terms of programs. And for that reason, about 15 years ago, entities like the General Assembly began to tap us to manage programs, other kinds of programs than just those that are funded from the Bay Plate and the tax checkoff. And there are two examples before you today. The first program, again, the General Assembly created through the Tree Solutions Now Act. It's our urban underserved grant tree planting grant program, and that's $10 million of the $11.5 million that's before you today. We've been making underserved community tree grants for years, and so this program just expands that existing program. And the first year of the program was funded a little bit differently, so we already have a year under our belt, and we can explain to you exactly what we do. Happy to answer questions. I don't want to take too much of your time unless you have questions on that. We did award 36 grants already with the FY23 money, which of course didn't come through you. 7.7 million in the door, out the door already this year, with half the year still to go. The FY24 program that would be funded with this pot of funds is open with a due date of March, so we're going to line projects up for July 1 so we can hit the ground running and hit those fall planting seasons. There was a specific question in the DLS budget analysis about the website, and I'll just say that Maryland Department of Environment is responsible for tracking all of the trees from the 5 million tree program. This urban tree program is just part of that, and so MDE will be setting up that website and will be participating as we are tasked to do so. The second program, really quickly, is expansion of the existing Chesapeake Conservation Corps into the Chesapeake Conservation and Climate Corps. This program has been running since 2010, established initially through you all, originally the idea of Senate President Miller. And it's a very cool program that matches young people with host organizations across the state. Many of you have had Conservation Corps members placed in your districts. It has about 300 alums at this point, and next year, based on the legislation, the Climate Solutions Now Act of 2022, we will be increasing the stipend for these young people, and we'll be able to place about 50 young people in host organizations. And those applications are open as well, and that program will start in August. We're happy to answer questions. Again, many of you have either urban trees grants in your districts or Conservation Corps members or both. So happy to answer questions about how these programs help your specific districts. And we're incredibly grateful to be here, and I really appreciate all of your time and help.
Thank you. Any comments from the committee? No? Okay. Dr. Hathaway, welcome.
Well, excuse me. Welcome, the honorable members of this esteemed committee. My name is Dr. Alvin Hathaway. I'm the president and CEO of Beloved Community Services Corporation. We are doing business as the Justice Thurgood Marshall Amenity Center. It's amazing that Justice Thurgood Marshall, as you know, is esteemed probably the greatest lawyer of the 20th century. And many people don't know that his career began in West Baltimore and Upton, in a public school that was segregated, and also that his academic preparation was such that he had amazing members that were colleagues of his class, persons like Clarence Mitchell Jr., persons like Carl Murphy. And Justice Thurgood Marshall demonstrated and exhibited amazing academic prowess such that he skipped a grade there in his elementary school. We were very fortunate because of the support of the state of Maryland that we were able to leverage $14 million in funding to restore that school. We closed on that in November 29th, 2022. Construction has begun. We are restoring that property in a very historically and accurate manner. When people go into this building, they will see exactly 2 restored classrooms that were the classrooms that were seated where Justice Thurgood Marshall learned and where his academic career began. We have also managed the process of the National Park Service that did a resource study. My dear beloved friend and colleague, Congressman Elijah Cummings, in May of 2019 submitted legislation to have this property be a resource study. And we have managed that process throughout. We have participated very intimately and intricately with that process. And of last Friday, they transmitted to Congress their letter of transmittal. The letter of transmittal, there are 4 areas in which you evaluate a property. One in terms of its historic significance, one in terms of its feasibility, and then there's an area that deals with sustainability, and then there's an area of funding. Their recommendation came back in National Park Service that we would be an affiliate site, an affiliate area. We have had meetings yesterday, and we will have a site visit with the National Park Service. We have kept our congressional delegation informed, Senator Van Hollen, Senator Cardin, Congressman Mfume. We are all in sync and in line that it is our intent that this will be a National Historic Landmark site, and it will be a site that will be on the a National Park Service historic site. We are very encouraged. One of the things that happened, I just to say to you, is that when they did their research study, they stopped in March of 2022, and they did not understand how we were going to interpret the legacy of the early Thurgood Marshall, where even the lower level, where he was, when he was a little mischievous, they would send him there for punishment with a U.S. Constitution in his hand. And he would read that U.S. Constitution. We have kept that site in its same historic capacity. Even the little boys' restroom area has maintained and kept in that. And they did not realize that we had a federal historic tax credit and a state historic tax credit. Mm-hmm. So we were also under the guidelines of the National Park Service in terms of its restoration. And I think that once we brought that to their attention, I think, Brother Patrick, that there is now an appetite to involve us with what we're going to brand Independence Weekend. Independence Weekend will be July the 2nd, when Justice Thurgood Marshall was born, also the date in which the Declaration of Independence was signed, and we will connect that to Fort McHenry, where on July the 4th and the celebration of 1812, and you have the fireworks. So I think we are very encouraged. I thank the state of Maryland. Your support has really, I think, paved the way for many to be supportive of this project. It will be a national site. We will honor the legacy of Justice Thurgood Marshall. We have amazing partnerships with University of Maryland College Park, University of Maryland Baltimore, as well as the BWI Thurgood Marshall Airport.
Great. Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from the committee? Okay, thank you all.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Nick.
Okay, next I have Nancy Hines and Frank Boston. And then I have down Nancy Easterling for questions only.
No, Madam Chair, I submitted written testimony, but then I just wanted to say a few words, if that's okay?
Absolutely.
I'm not great at the online stuff, so I don't think I did it right.
And Jan Briscoe, is Jan Briscoe here? Do you want to come up to the table? Okay, go ahead.
Me? Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. This is a great opportunity for us to be here to talk about the Signal 13 Foundation. Thank you to Frank Boston, who is one of our great board members that we have. As I said, I did submit written testimony, but since the Signal 13 Foundation is relatively unknown, we thought it was a great opportunity for us to at least tell you about the organization and what we do. So the Signal 13 Foundation was founded in 1983 by Police Commissioner Frank J. Battaglia. The mission of the organization has remained the same for 40 years, and that is to provide support to the men and women of the Baltimore City Police Department, both sworn officers and civilians. And we provide that support with financial hardship grants and with college scholarships for their children. I can honestly say it's the most rewarding job I've ever had, and it's really an honor to work for the men and women who have dedicated their careers to protecting the citizens of Baltimore. So the Baltimore Police Department, is going through some very challenging times. I don't think that's a secret. And the Signal 13 Foundation is a constant in the officers and the civilians who work at the department in their lives. We are a resource that they can depend on if they need support and they hit hard times. So in 2022, we gave out $222,000 in support and assistance to police personnel. We have helped several officers who have been injured in the line of duty. We have helped officers who have gotten sick, whether that's with cancer or COVID. And we have also helped 2 officers that had family emergencies, which were house fires. So that is what Signal 13 does, and every single person that we have helped has been very grateful for the support. And I also, police officers and civilians in the department are also parents, and they, just like everybody else, struggle to put their kids through college. So our scholarships, the Signal 13 scholarships, help close the gap for these families and really relieve the financial burden of educating their children. So Frank can attest to this as a board member, but the Signal 13 Foundation board would really like to do so much more. Right now our scholarships are at $1,000 for a low, $5,000 for a high. And imagine the tremendous impact we could have if we could double the scholarships levels. But our finances are limited, and right now we cannot do that. So Signal 13 has been around for 40 years, but we've flown under the radar until, by choice, from the board up until a couple of years ago. And since that time, we've worked really, really hard to raise the awareness about Signal 13 and build an annual donor base. But all of that takes time. So we need your support. We thank you for your support. It really is a goal of the board and a goal of mine. I mean, this is the ultimate goal, that by being the first, being a source of support for these police officers, that we will help improve morale within the department, and we will ultimately help with the retention and recruitment efforts of the police department. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Boston.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Frank Boston III. I'm here not as a paid lobbyist, but as Nancy said, as a board member. I sit on the executive committee, and I'm in line to be president, and starting in February, I'll be the secretary. I've been on the board since 2015. I started smiling to myself because there's nothing more I can say after what Nancy just said. She pretty much has said it all. Over the years, the need for financial grant support has increased for both the civilians and the sworn police officers who have been injured in the line of duty and who are facing other serious health issues. It is very rewarding to be in a position where, we can give money and provide. In one instance, we had a police officer coming home from work, a lieutenant, who got shot in an attempted robbery, and we were able to go above and beyond and work with the FOP to provide this gentleman a van that was equipped, because he's, paralyzed and disabled for life. Not only do we help the sworn and civilian police officers who are in distress And by the way, Signal 13, Senator Bailey knows this as a former law enforcement officer. Signal 13 means officer in distress. And that's what the name of our foundation is. We try to help people in distress. But we also, as Nancy alluded to, give scholarships, to those children of the police officers. And we've done a great job at promoting it, and so therefore the need has increased. And we wanted, as Nancy said, to double the amount. But everyone is experiencing the financial difficulties in their investments as a result of the market, and so we had to put a hold on that. Our money is limited. We only have one full-time worker, which is Nancy, and we have a very lean budget. So we are increasing our fundraising efforts. We have a campaign going on. This $250,000
If they've got you
grant.
working with them, Frank, we know that they're in good hands.
Huh?
If they've got you working with them, we know they're in good hands.
Yes. Oh, thank you. This $250,000 grant would be a tremendous boost. And as Nancy said, morale around the state, not just Baltimore City, in police departments, has taken a hit. And so this just sends a signal that, we still support you and it will give a boost.
Okay.
Just wanted to give you couple of quick numbers real quick. 50% of our active scholarship recipients attend Maryland schools. 17% of our active scholarship recipients attend historic black colleges, HBCUs. 11% of our scholarship awards this year are for $5,000. And 73% of our scholarship awards this year are at $2,000 or below. So, we don't hold on to it. We give it out. We encourage the kids to go to school, and we definitely look out for our injured and fallen police officers and their families. Thank you.
Thank you. I notice, and probably my colleagues notice it too, it used to be that I could give out a $1,000 scholarship and kids would be really excited about it because it would really help them.
Yep.
Well, because the expenses are so high right now, I ended up having a lot of people giving me back the $1,000 because it didn't help them enough. They didn't have enough other places to get money to even go to the community colleges. So I've raised my amounts that I give out to students just because we've got to get more kids in there and ready to go. So,
yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Nancy Easterling, I have you down for questions only. Did you want to make some remarks?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just briefly, for those of you not familiar with Historic Sotterly, Madam Chair, I know you are, and of course, Senator Bailey is. We are so grateful for the support. Over a quarter of a century ago, Sotterly set its feet on a path toward an inclusive history and making sure we interpreted the lives of all who lived there. It has been an incredible journey. We now have over 200 self-identified descendants who are part of our programming, part of our leadership. There's so much that we have been doing for our community. We even do out-of-the-box things like Growing for Good, where we donate food that we grow on site to our local food pantries. There are a lot of ways you can promote equity. And when I heard the Maryland Scenic Railroad talk about being part of their community, that's what Historic Sotterly is. It's a place to share, to come together, and to be able to have conversations, but be able to share the joy and the realism that comes from a place like ours. So we are completely grateful, and of course I would be happy to answer any questions anybody would have.
Okay, I don't see any questions.
Thank you so much.
Okay, Jan Briscoe?
Thank you very much. I'm Jan Briscoe. I'm president of the Board of Trustees of Historic Sotterly. And yes, we testified in this room, I guess, at the last session, and we were very grateful for the support. Our sponsor, Senator Bailey, from our mother county, St. Mary's County, and we are very proud of what we're doing to, again, tell the full story of our history, whether it's painful or not. And we join together, whether it's descendants of people that owned Historic Sotterly when it was a plantation, including my family, but also other members of the board who descend from enslaved of Sotterly. And we're showing how we all can talk in a civil, respectful way about our history. So we're very grateful
What
for
a
your
concept.
support. How
Yeah,
unique, right?
it's wonderful, yeah.
We're
yeah.
very appreciative of the support.
Senator-
It's
Okay,
truly a model for our nation,
Sure.
what you see with these descendants. It is.
okay, Senator Bailey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to say thank you to all of you for coming up here. 3 of the 4 people sitting here I've worked with at great length. Ladies, the gentleman sitting there beside you, Frank Boston, working for the police, I started walking the halls with him in the early 2000s.
Yep.
I knew nothing about Annapolis, and he was like, I can tell you it all starts grassroots. We're going to walk around and we're going to get to know everybody.
Yep.
And it really did, he put me on a path that I really have enjoyed, and partially how I got here today. But getting to work with you all down Sodderly has been very special, and we will continue to work for all of you and all the police.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you for the kind words. Yep.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, I think we're good. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you very
Yep,
much.
you too.
And thank you to my committee. Appreciate it.